Last night was supposed to be one of the happiest nights in modern Mexican football history. After 40 long years, Mexico finally won a World Cup knockout match on home soil. In the roaring cauldron of the Estadio Aztec, a whole nation poured into the streets to celebrate, and by the early hours of the morning, 4 of those people were dead. This is a difficult one, and I want to handle it with the care it deserves, because behind the scorelines and the drama of this tournament, 4 real families woke up today to the worst news imaginable. So let's talk about what happened on the pitch, and then what happened in the streets afterward, honestly and respectfully. Let's start with the match itself, because the celebration came from a genuinely special night of football. Mexico faced Ecuador in the round of 32 at the Aztec. For 4 decades this exact stage had haunted them. Mexico had not won a World Cup knockout game since 1986. 40 years of early exits, of near misses of a nation that lives and breathes this sport falling short at the first real hurdle. That was the weight on their shoulders when they walked out on Tuesday night, and they didn't just win, they were spectacular. The game was actually delayed for an hour by a fierce electric storm, but once it cleared, Mexico were irresistible. At the heart of it was a 17-year-old named Gilberto Mora, who put in an astonishing performance well beyond his years. His mind was a step ahead of everyone on the pitch, and the opening goal was a thing of beauty. A clipped ball sent Julian Quinones scorching into space, and he smashed it into the roof of the net. The second came from veteran Raul Jimenez, more than double Mora's age, who pounced on a defensive error. It finished 2-0, and it sent Mexico into the last 16, where they will face England on Sunday. For the coach Javier Gir, it was deeply personal after 2 previous World Cup knockout exits under his management. "I belong to that generation that hadn't managed to take this step," he said afterward with visible emotion. "No victory compares to today's because it happened at home with our own people," he proudly declared. It was by every measure a night of pure joy. The Aztecs shook, and the whole country celebrated. That's exactly what makes what came next so heartbreaking, because celebration suddenly turned into catastrophe. As the final whistle blew, more than 1 million people flooded into the center of Mexico City. The heart of it was the Po de la Reforma, and the iconic Angle of Independence monument. Fans had been gathering there since well before midday, waiting through rain and the long storm delay. The city had closed off roads, set up giant screens, and prepared for an enormous celebration. Somewhere inside that dense, euphoric crowd, celebration suddenly turned into a deadly and heartbreaking catastrophe. Emergency teams were called to 3 unconscious people at different spots around the crowded boulevard. A 44-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman received advanced resuscitation efforts, but both sadly died. A third victim, a 48-year-old woman, later died in hospital after suffering fatal asphyxiation injuries. A 4th victim, a man in his 30s, suffered seizures, cardiac arrest, and later died. 4 lives were lost in the space of a single unforgettable night of celebration. That word suffocation explains the grim reality of what happens when crowds become dangerously dense. People can become compressed so tightly that they physically cannot expand their chest to breathe. No one even has to fall, because the crushing pressure alone can become deadly. From a distance, everything can appear joyful, while tragedy silently unfolds inside the moving crowd. Local media reported pyrotechnics may have triggered panic, causing people to run in every direction. Some people fell and were trampled as the terrified crowd surged through the packed streets. Videos later showed people trapped near the Angel Monument, completely unable to move freely. The crowd swayed helplessly as pressure pushed everyone back and forth without any escape. Other videos showed fights, people lying on the ground, and streets covered with bottles and cans. The contrast could not have been crueler between joyful celebrations and desperate emergency medical treatment. Paramedics performed CPR on victims while celebrations continued only a short distance away. Authorities had actually tried to prevent such a tragedy before this historic celebration. This was not the first massive street party during Mexico's remarkable World Cup campaign. The crowds had grown larger with every victory as the host nation continued advancing. Officials banned alcohol sales, increased giant screens, and spread viewing areas across the city. The mayor even warned fans to avoid the Angel Monument because crowds were already overwhelming. Authorities recognized the danger and tried to manage it, but 4 people still died. That is the sobering reality facing one of the world's largest metropolitan areas. More than 20 million people live there, and football passion runs deeper than almost anywhere. When 1 million fans gather together, the margin for disaster becomes frighteningly small. President Claudia Sheinbaum announced an investigation into what exactly went wrong during the celebrations. Authorities will review safety measures before Mexico's upcoming World Cup match against England. Mayor Clara Bogata expressed condolences and urged everyone to celebrate with responsibility, care, and empathy. This tragic pattern may already feel familiar to those following the tournament closely. Mexico's opening World Cup match was also surrounded by protests and public disorder. From the beginning, the tournament story included football excitement, alongside growing public safety concerns. The focus has not only been inside stadiums, but also in streets filled with supporters. Questions have continued about whether authorities could safely manage such overwhelming football passion. Last night, those concerns received their most painful answer yet through unimaginable tragedy. The fans who gathered to celebrate did nothing wrong by supporting their beloved national team. Celebrating a historic football victory is a beautiful and deeply human experience. The overwhelming majority simply wanted to share joy with fellow supporters across the country. This is not about celebrating too hard, but about protecting enormous crowds safely. Important questions now must be answered before another possible celebration takes place on Sunday. If Mexico defeat England, the streets could become even more crowded than before. Authorities now carry the responsibility of ensuring future celebrations remain safe for everyone. For now, 4 people who went out celebrating their country will never return home. Amid all the football drama, this is the story that deserves to be remembered most. Our thoughts remain with the grieving families and with the people of Mexico City. If you take one thing from this story, look after those around you and stay safe.